everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Healing Home. I'm your host, Michelle, and I want to say happy summer solstice eve to everybody. We are at the height of the light, as some like to say, and it feels pretty good. As usual, time just seems to continue to fly by, so feels like with a blink of an eye, we're at the summer solstice, but it's a time of celebration. It's a time of where I notice a lot of the yellow and the orange flowers are really starting to come through. What I start to notice with the seasons is that each season has a color theme. I find that, early, like just a few weeks ago, we were more in the purples and the blues. And then all of a sudden we start to transfer over into the oranges and the yellows, representative of the sun and this glorious time that we're in. And today I'm very excited. And I feel as though it's timely that I have my guest today because I know that she understands the cycles of the wheel of the year, the cycles of nature, and understands the plant world in her own special way. But we have Maxine Miller with us today. And I am just over the moon that she wanted to come and spend some time with us. I've been a fan of her work for a handful of years. My boyfriend and I came across her work at the Northwest Tarot Symposium, which happens in Portland every single year. And I came across her art. I bought a couple of her pieces. And ever since then, I've just been absolutely smitten. And she recently has come out with a Oracle deck. That it was a collaborative effort. So we're going to talk about the Oracle deck. We're going to talk about Maxine's art. We're also going to go through a handful of cards so she can go into some detail about stuff. We're also going to talk about her story and how she came to the point she's at right now. So without further ado, please help me in welcoming Maxine to the stream. Hello, Maxine.
Hi.
How are you?
In podcast land.
Yes. Hello, and thank you so much for being here.
It is my pleasure.
So, how's your day going so far? And anything exciting for solstice plans coming up for you?
No. No, it's going to be a fairly quiet one. We've had some pounding rain for a couple of days, so it will feel very solstice-y tomorrow when we are supposed to get a little bit of actual sun. I would say the most exciting thing going on for me is that I contributed an entry to the Book of Cernunnos that John Beckett and Jason Mankey have put together. And it just came out, and I just got one today to look at. It looks exactly like this.
Nice.
And this is just all the contributors just describe their encounters and experiences with the great horned one. And I'm a fan of his. So I have a little ditty in there. I'm really pleased about that.
Oh, that's so cool. And where can people find that if they're interested in getting their hands on one?
It is actually on Amazon. This is it's a small publisher, ADF Publishing.
Okay.
It's called. And it's doing for a small publisher, it kind of debuted with some force, which was nice. I guess it's got some Cernunnos energy behind the release. It just literally came out about 3 days ago. So,
wow, that's exciting. That's so cool.
It is really cool.
Well, I want to give you a chance for people who may not be familiar with your work and who you are and a little bit of your background. If you could just introduce yourself and let us know anything that you want people to know about and even where people can find you. Although I have all of your links and stuff down below in the description. But yeah, just give us a little quick run through of who you are.
Oh, gosh. The short version of your whole life. This is your life. I wanted to be a ballet dancer and it didn't pan. So I was doing art to make a little money on the side. And I just got a great sort of cosmic push. No, you're actually supposed to be doing that. So I started out in the greeting card business with a company called Paper Moon that was doing art cards. This is all the way back in the late 70s. And that was kind of unique for the time, just art and blank inside. And they were kind of from left field, and they just wanted to showcase artists. And I was very lucky to get in with them when they started. And that was a lot of fun. And I made money at a very young age, and then thought, oh, this is easy. and then it wasn't. So they were increasingly asking for fantasy and fluffy and a little more mainstream than I liked to do. So I ended up pulling away from them, and my life was rather dark at the time. And I just thought, well, I can't do any more unicorns, so I'm just going to stop. So I actually stopped for a year or so and got some therapy and was encouraged. You would feel some relief from your troubles if you could put this on paper. And I was like, who would want to look at that? Crazy dark visions or whatever. So naive. But anyway, I ended up doing that, and I found an audience of the punk rock scene in the early 80s in LA. People who wanted to see black and white psychodramas and hearts with daggers through them and all that kind of thing. And it got me back into the business. And because I worked retail for a couple of years, I don't want to do art anymore. So I'll just, get a job. And then suddenly I encountered people that wanted what I was doing. And I was there illustrating for the hairband era that went through the early 90s. And that was a trip and a half. And I ran with that, and it was fun, but at the end of the day, it's not yours. You're illustrating other people's visions. You don't own your work. You are subject to somebody's often ridiculous opinions. So I opened a shop because I was like, okay, I had kind of a similar thing where I'm making money, but I'm not happy. So I'm just going to open a little antique shop, and I'm going to draw whatever the hell I want. And everything that came after, the style and the subjects that I have now been doing for 30 years, started right there in that little shop, including my very first green man. Because I recently started gardening and was having fun with it. And just, if you make art, you tend to use what's going on in your life. And I should add that I acquired a business partner who was a great friend of mine, who was interested in his Celtic heritage. So he was telling me a little bit about mythology, and we were doing Scottish clan crests for t-shirts and things like this. His name is Michael McFarlane, by the way.
That sounds familiar to me for some reason.
The umbrella business is Celtic Jackalope. And okay. He does all the Highland games. He works much harder than I do. But anyway, I'm starting to garden, and I'm getting interested in Celtic mythology and stuff like that. And we're doing clan crest shirts, and they're cool. They're heraldic symbols, basically. And that was great. But I just said at one point, these are cool. What could I do for our brand new company that would be a little more opportunity for me to express myself? And he said, well, you could draw Carnunos. And I said, who's Carnunos? Just, I never heard of that. So I did a little reading about it, and I just immediately knew what he looked like and who he was. Just out of nowhere, because there was nothing in my background that would have connected me to such a thing. But that was the door opening to basically everything I do now. I didn't know anything about paganism or Celtic spirituality or witchcraft. And that was all just, the invitation to come through the door and find out about all this stuff. And from that point, that is pretty much the subject of what I illustrate. So there you go.
Ta-da! Nice. Yeah, no, that's beautiful. Did you have your shop in LA?
I did. It was called the Gilded Queen.
Ooh.
And it turns out that people did not know what gilded meant. And even the phone book spelled it wrong with a U. And I was like, oh my God, this is so ridiculous. It was in West Hollywood, and I had it for 2 years, at the end of which I had to close it because I had breast cancer. And that was not a pleasant left turn, but I closed the shop. I dealt with that. I convalesced, and then when I came out of that, our business had started to grow a little bit. So I would take in some freelance illustrating. I did stuff for movies. And I mean, if you live in LA and you are a creative person, you are going to be involved with the industry. And I did costume sketches for movies, including a couple Batman movies. And my favorite gig of that period was I did props and prop sketches for Angel, the spinoff from Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh, cool.
It was very fun. It was very fun. Most of the episodes, they would be seeking out a particular demon. And what they would do is go to the library and get ye olde book with ye olde illustration. And almost all of them were done by me. They would ask for different styles, which was an interesting challenge. This one should look like a medieval woodcut. This one should look like an engraving. And it was just so crazy. The first one I did, I submitted it. This was back in the day before we even used computers for such things. And somebody picked it up from my doorstep. And when I came home from running errands, there was a message on my answering machine. See, I am really old, people. And she said, they love it. Is there any way that you could add a string of intestines around the demon's head? And I thought, that's the coolest art direction I've ever had. You want intestines? I got you.
Yeah,
yeah.
That is so cool. I love that. Thank you for sharing all this stuff because you're actually knocking out some of my questions that I have for you, which typically happens when I ask someone to introduce. I always love to see where we go because then
Yeah.
it just opens up all sorts of avenues. And so thanks for sharing about the breast cancer. And so I have to ask, during that time, was art an outlet for you to help you heal and help you process what was going on? Or did you kind of just, was it like sometimes it's just like you just back away from everything and you just
Yeah,
have to
really
retreat?
the biggest thing that I remember from the period of time is just fatigue. It was like, uh, I was 40 and my doctor said, we're going to give you a really rough course because you're young enough that you could tolerate it. If you were 50 or 60, we'd think, oh, well, you may not live that long, so we're not going to, be that hard on you. But it just really felt like being a fragile little old lady, where you would stoop down and then have a hard time getting up. And so I think it sounds funny to say, but I think the thing that saved me was cable TV and Victoria magazines. Because I would just be like laying in bed or on the sofa and I would just be looking at beautiful things. 'Cause I didn't
Ah,
really feel well enough to work. But I, I had started off on this new direction, and so by the time I felt well enough to get back in there, I had lots of ideas. And some of the things that are in the oracle deck date all the way back then, because the deck evolved over many years, and these pieces were not. They were. I remember a great quote from Morrissey. He said he liked to do singles. He hated doing albums because he was interested in what he was interested in. This thing that's in front of him right this minute. Oh God, don't ask me for 10 more tracks, And I was a little bit the same way. I would do something that was interesting to me. And luckily for me, I was mostly working in black and white, which our company made T-shirts, and that's very easy to translate. So a lot of what I was doing, following my own inspiration, was adaptable to put on a T-shirt. So as our line grew, we had a whole bunch of Scottish clan crests, and then we started to have what we would just call our pagan stuff, you know. And over time, it just grew, and I started the very first one that ended up being a part of the deck was Bleeding Hearts, and I just did it because it's a beautiful flower with a beautiful, graceful growing habit, and it just inspired me to do a little drawing. And I didn't think about it. It wasn't like I shall do plant stuff from here on out. But I had my green men, and I had the bleeding hearts, and then just something else in the way of a plant would. Oh, that'd be fun to illustrate, and it was a number of years before I started to say, there's starting to be a lot of these.
yeah, and that's cool because I wanted to find out from you too, when you choose a plant or when you decide you're going to draw a plant, does it feel like you choose the plant or does the plant choose you? Or is it like a combination? Because I love you share the story in the Oracle book. And then talking about how when you were in LA, you had like a very small patch of land, where you could grow a little bit. And then you ended up moving to another house that actually had a garden that hadn't been worked. And
Yeah.
so that was when you really started to, hone a relationship with the plants and realize that there was a language there.
Yes,
There was
that's
some
right.
sort of dialogue.
That's
And
right.
so I want to pick your brain a little bit about that, because that's one of my favorite parts about plants is the secret language that lies beneath.
Yeah. Yeah. It's and when you read witchcraft books, it's there's a phrase subtle energies, which is kind of apt because it's not a conversation out loud in English. You're not being hit over the head. It's a very subtle kind of communication. And in I had the first plant that really seemed like a magical plant to me was Datura brugmansia, and I grew one from just a 1 gallon pot that ended up being the size of a tree, and a small tree, but a tree. And then I had to move house, and they root really easily. So I mean, it was daunting because what do? You can't dig up the whole thing. I mean, it's 8 feet tall or 9 feet tall or something. So I ended up like taking off a large branch and potting it, and then I put it in my new space. And my boyfriend teased me because he said that thing is dead stick because it took a long time before it decided I think I can work with this. And then that one grew and grew and got even bigger. It was massive, and there was just something about it that was communicating with me. It just, it's hard to articulate. But the plant itself has these pendulous white flowers. This was, for those of you plant nerds, it was a double flower. So it's
Oh,
even like
yes.
a little sexier shape than just the trumpet. And at night, it had this amazing perfume, and I don't know, it on some level it just spoke to me. And so I drew that one, read about it a little bit. They grow wild in Mexico and South America, in graveyards, and I was a bit of a goth, so that's okay. It's this great, sexy, witchy plant, and it's goth as F. And so I'm like, okay. So I drew that one, and that was fun. And again, I didn't think that this is a series. I'm just doing stuff that inspires me. And then somewhere along the line, I moved from LA to Portland. Uh, LA is a really fun town to visit, and it's extremely superficial. It's extremely, and I mean, the people that I knew that I thought of as friends were, a lot of them were industry people, and making movies and TV and records, people are obsessed. And that's fine, that's as it should be, but it is not necessarily going to serve you well for deep, meaningful friendships. So I just felt like I don't belong here. And the Celtic tradition is extremely focused on seasons and weather and seasons, and these ancient cultures. I mean, basically, if your crops aren't good, people are going to die. I mean, it was everything to them. So LA is pretty all the time. If in your garden, if you don't want a plant to grow, you don't water it. It's just like, you just don't point the hose over there. It's just so coming up to Portland in the Pacific Northwest was like, oh, okay, I actually need to learn how to do this all over again because everything gets water. This is crazy. I didn't really understand deciduous plants because down there, most plants just look the same all year round, and some things bloom all year round. It's an interesting challenge. It's rather, I mean, it's just different, and so there were some experiments that didn't pan, but but here there are seasons and they're very distinct and they're very beautiful and they're very inspiring. So it was just absolutely like, yes, this is where I need to be in order to feed what I'm doing uh, and then I made friends who were the sort of sustaining kind of friendships that a person needs. You don't need a million friends, but you need a couple of solid ones. So
Yeah, I would agree with you 100% on all of that stuff, and specifically the friendship thing. And, I think there's a societal propaganda that comes from, whatever it be, TV or movies or whatever, that you should have a lot of people around. And the more people you have around, the better it is, or the more popular you're going to be, or what have you.
mhm.
But I think that as you get older, kind of as what we were talking about backstage, is like as you get older, you start to learn the things that work for you.
Yeah.
And then you realize these little things of like, actually, it's better to have a handful than a bucket.
Well, also in LA at the time, I mean, LA was the real focus of the music industry in the years that I was there making art for bands. So I knew a lot of famous people, and if you if you hang out a few times with Slash, then everybody thinks that's your best friend. And if they're going to play, everybody thinks they're going to get tickets from you. And it's like, yes, I was acquainted with Slash and a whole bunch of other, cool people, but it was just this thing where people wanted to use you for who you knew and who you worked with and all that kind of thing. And here was the opposite. If I met people and I didn't know them well and I was telling a story that involved somebody like Slash, it's like a curtain came down. Like they don't want to hear about famous people. And I was kind of like, what's this? I mean, because I'm not going to tell stories about rock stars to make you like me. If I have an interesting story that involves people who happen to be famous, I'm going to tell that. But it was just sort of the thing here was that you don't make friends in LA. You meet somebody, oh my God, you're so cool, we should totally hang out, you're my bestie,
Right.
first night. Here they need to kind of see your face a few times. People know how to be good friends, so they don't need you in that kind of way. You prove yourself, and because people have a quality friendship to offer, they don't give it away in the first night you meet them in a bar. So so the first year or so was kind of hard, but I actually am good friends with some of the people that I met the first week I moved here. But it just took a while for the friendships to flourish. So
Yeah. That's
yeah.
great. That's great. I feel like that's how quality things happen, usually. I mean, there's the things that spontaneously combust and it,
Yeah.
lasts a long time or whatever, but sometimes a lot of those things are flashes and pans.
Well,
And
you could also make a gardening analogy since we're
Yes.
talking about plants. The things that you nurture are the things that end up being worth your while. So, I mean,
Indeed.
I'm not a big plant geeks. With the plant geeks, I'm not a big flower girl because I feel let down when they just die and go away. And so I'm about shrubs. Give me a good old shrub that's a constant companion. The last few years, I have given in to some flowers, but I mostly I like to make the garden in an almost architectural way. And so I don't necessarily want something that is now going to let me down and disappear when I worked so hard to bring it forth.
Yeah, I like that. That's why, yeah, I'm kind of a perennial girl, and that's why I really like the medicinal plants. Try
Yeah.
and grow food, and there's all sorts of things that come into play with gardening too. It's like there's hail, there's wind, there's
Mhm.
drought,
Yeah.
there's voles, there's bugs. And some of the best advice I've ever been given for gardening is plant something and let it go, because
Mhm.
you just never know what's gonna happen, even if it is a perennial or what have
Yeah, that's
you.
right. A friend of mine just lost some stuff in the hailstorm that we had day before yesterday, and they're pretty new at it. And I
Mhm.
said, you kind of gardening teaches you patience. It teaches you things you didn't necessarily want to learn, but it's about change, and I struggle with change in life. You know, uh, it's kind of normal, but if the hail wrecked that, or you had to cut it back, something else will evolve. Uh, a lot of times I will say to the plant that I had to really hack back, there's always a sacrifice. And on a cellular level, I think they understand that. But yeah, it's always different. And the thing that I mean, I had a rosemary that was huge, and then it just said, okay, I'm done. I'm dead now.
Yeah.
It's like, what? You've been there 10 years. How can you just be dead? I did everything right. But that is just how a garden is. So,
Yeah, I think that it's one of the most, enlightening and humbling, practices that you can take on really, because of all the things, that we're mentioning here. And so, yeah, I just love that your roots are in the garden, and that's
well, yeah.
really what
Well,
got you going.
even that, like the composting
Mm.
is kind of great, because it completes a cycle. So even if you lost your beloved rosemary, or whatever, the trimmings of things that you had to cut back, it's like they're not entirely done. There's this there's this great story of Christopher's, too, that it's in his Plant Spirit Familiar book, which was like my first plant magic book. That it's a wonderful book. Go buy this book. Um, and he had a deep relationship with thornapple, and there's a saying that the magic is in the dose, because a little too much is not a good thing with poisonous anything. But anyway, he was communing with the plant, and taking some of it internally in a very, he likes flower essences, which are very diluted. And the plant spirit was encouraging no more. And he's smart, so he didn't automatically do that. These are banes, they're not warm and fuzzy. And he said, but if I do that, then I might die. And the plant spirit communicated to him, well, that's okay. You'll just come back next spring.
Oh my god, I love that.
Isn't that
Wow.
great? Yeah.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome. I really want to talk to him at some point because after just going through now I just want to show this is the booklet with Maxine and Christopher's Oracle that they just put out. And I gotta say, this is seriously one
It's a
of
book.
the
Yes,
it's a book. It's a
it's a book.
hefty Oracle booklet and it's amazing. And as a plant person reading through this, I've learned more than I even bargain for from an Oracle deck booklet.
Yeah.
So for that reason alone, I encourage everybody to get this this Oracle. But we have the beautiful cards that Maxine has added to, and she's shared basically. And you can talk about this too. But these are pieces that you've been working on, as we've been talking about, for like many years,
Yeah,
and
because
so you
it
turned them into
it
cards,
wasn't like start here and I'm just going to work on this. I
right?
actually I did focus on it, the last couple years before publication. You know, our Celtic Jackalopes line of shirts and products is kind of vast, and I was like, we have too much stuff. I mean, I need to just like put the brakes on a little bit. And then I thought, okay, well then I'll just devote myself to this project, pretty exclusively for a couple of years. We weren't even selling prints initially. Um, it was just when there started to be a lot of them, it just came up in conversation. Should we make prints of these? And yeah, let's try that, and it ended up being, I mean, I think we've got about 26 styles of them, and he brings them to all the shows. But it was very unexpected because it wasn't done for that. Um, but yeah, it was very circuitous, and there were things that I had done that I hadn't thought of as being part of the botanical series. And then I realized, oh wow, that bleeding heart that I did a million years ago, that actually fits perfectly into this or whatever. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I love that it wasn't planned too, but there was like you talked to backstage about people just kind of saying, "When are you putting out the deck? When are you putting out the deck?" And you going, "What are you talking about?" And
Yeah,
then
I thought it was a book. Because I'm in a slightly different headspace than to just do a thing and then we make a shirt out of it, or do a thing and we make a print out of it. And then I'm like, wow, this is a long form project, which I really hadn't had a lot of experience of. Um, so yeah, I thought it was going to be a book, and I would see Christopher every year at Pantheacon, and he would say, "Oh, I love that plant," or "What are you going to do?" And then I'm going to do a book or whatever. And at one point, he said, "Well, I wouldn't have enough time to write a book with you, but I would write a foreword for you." And I was like, "Oh, that's really cool." you know, Not thinking a lot more about it. And then when there was a bunch of work, and I was doing the Northwest Tarot Symposium because I'm friendly with Jay and Jadzia DeForest that promoted it. They said, "Do you want to be a vendor?" And I'm like, "Well, okay, I don't have a tarot deck, but sure." And I was selling those, and there were a lot of styles. So people just came up to my table and just said, "When is the deck coming out?" And I'm like, "Deck? Oh, deck. This is a deck." It explodes. This is a deck. So it was, I mean, so thank you to people who went to the show, because you were the ones that told me it was a deck. So yes, lo and behold, it shall be a deck.
Yes, I love that you turned it into a deck because it's glorious. And I think now at this portion of the interview, I think we could transition into our plan to go through just a handful of the cards.
Sure.
So I selected 12 cards that are some of my favorites. A couple of them I actually own the actual physical prints of, so I want to be able to show one of those prints too, so people can kind of see what these full versions look like as well. But I have to say too, until you see Maxine's art like in its full form, gosh, I mean, the cards do it justice, but when you see the full actual print, it's just they're so beautiful. And I just love your style, and I love all the detail you incorporate and all the symbolism that's in there too, which is just really awesome. And I can't wait to hear what you have to say about the cards that I pulled. So I'm just going to add this to the stream here.
Ah,
And
yes.
so let's see if, well, let's put ourselves on the side there. That's better.
All
All
right.
right. So I started out with the Witch's Garden just because I really love this one, and it encompasses, I mean, your deck, the kind of the subtitle is Plants from the Witch's Garden. So
Yes.
and this is the art that I used, giving you credit for it in the thumbnail for this show because it's just so beautiful, and
Thank you.
I
Thank
love it. I love it so much. So
I I had almost thought that this would be the cover, but it's actually a little complicated for a cover. Um, but what we'd settled on was that this was going to be the back of the cards because, and then right at the very end where we're getting done with everything, and I just had this idea, this needs to be a card. And I said to him, really what this is like the world card in the tarot. This is like the summation and the fullness of the journey. And it just it hadn't occurred to me up to that point. I just was doing something decorative for the back, and uh, putting in, some of the things. As I say, thornapple is very significant to him, and mandrake is a significant plant. But I mean, they're all great. I don't necessarily choose a favorite. But there are some that feel more personal to you. But that was the thing about this card, was that this is the meaning of this is similar to that. It's a summation of all the experiences, and the pentagram. It's kind of funny because I'm old enough that pentagrams, there was a point where people were shy of using them. There was a point where people didn't relate to skull imagery. I mean, when I was doing stuff for rock and roll bands, they were all about skulls and hearts with daggers, but it was very, very left. And Day of the Dead stuff then had a moment where it became part of the cultural conversation, and people began to be less scared of skull imagery. And pentagrams are still things that people freak out over. I think it was last year, a group of witches organized in order to allow military cemeteries to have pentagrams on the gravestones for the first time in American history. Um,
wow, I didn't know that. That's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. We did a pentagram shirt, geez, 1990 or 95 or something. And I said to my business partner, why don't you just put a target on your back? I wouldn't have worn it back in that day. It had a lot of power, and to a lot of people it was very negative and scary. But in the case of this artwork, it was like, it was just like saying, this is what this is. This is about witchcraft. This is about plants and witchcraft, and it's sort of undeniable. So
Yes.
that's
I
how
would
it
have
happened.
to agree. Yeah, I'd have to agree. And then I think of Earth, when I see the pentagram. That's
Yeah,
my first thing that comes to mind is Earth. And I love that you compare this to a world card because I felt the same way when I first saw it. I'm like, oh, this is the world card, and then it is the 33rd of a 33 card deck.
yeah,
So it's very appropriate, indeed. Next on the docket here, I selected
yeah.
cannabis.
Well, why not? Why not honor it? I don't smoke, but obviously a lot of people are very fond of this particular plant, and but you know, nothing went in this deck in a jaded kind of a way. Like, oh, people will dig that, or they will buy it because they like their herb. Um, I don't smoke, so I'm not using it in a magical way, but it has the respect of that. And why not elevate it? You know, uh, I'm not just going to do, a big portrait of Bob Marley or something cheesy. Why not? Why not elevate it? Its mysteriousness, and there are some Rasta symbols in there, and as well as the planetary and astrological correspondences. But I kind of wanted it to look like those great old cigarette ads from the early part of the 1900s. So that was the inspiration there, and I this is probably the most sort of Art Deco looking design in a deck. Most of my references are a little earlier than Deco, but it just kind of suited this one. So
Yeah. I love that. You totally got that, kind of older cigarette, poster art sort of thing going on here. I think it's glorious. And
well,
can Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say most of what I do. I mean, I I am very close to the stuff that inspires me, and it sounds. It's funny because a lot of people will try and punk my stuff, and they will say, "Oh, I thought that was public domain." Um, but in a sense, if it looks like it's from the late 1800s or early 1900s, then I've done my job properly, because that's just what I geek out on. Um, and also, like, that I because I wanted to be a ballet dancer, there is an element of that with everything I draw. So all these characters are dancers in a sense.
Ooh, yeah. I love that. Yeah, because this to me, it really does tap into cannabis's essence as well, too. Just it being on the top of her head, there's like this illumination,
Yeah,
and for
exactly.
me, cannabis has always been a plant that I've resonated with since a young age, but always the first thing that comes to mind to me is it's an opener. It opens you up in a different way. It opens your perspective in a lot of ways, and I think that you illustrated this energy very, very, very
Well, the
beautifully.
all of the ones that are psychoactive, I mean, it's a little fun for you to to work with, because altered consciousness, I mean, that's very suggestive of images. So
Yeah, definitely.
yeah.
Next up, I
Speaking
chose that.
of
Yeah, right. I know. Here we line them up. Well, and I just have to say, I don't know if people are going to be able to see it, but this is one that I purchased from you a couple years ago at the symposium. So I'm going to see if I can make this let's see. I don't know if it's going to work full screen so that people can just see like the full version here. I have it framed up. And I just think this is such a beautiful piece. And when I bought it from you, you had said that this was one of your newer ones. And so I'm excited to hear you talk about this a little bit more on
Okay.
the card level. So let's bring that back up here. Here we go.
I am trying to remember. It's so funny because I mean, magic mushrooms, it's like you're halfway there. Um, I was telling you before we started that my mind is like a sieve, and to tell you the truth, I can't remember how I got this idea.
It's
Uh,
yeah, it's all good. I think it is so brilliant. I mean, I love it.
well, some ideas are logical, or you'll read the mythology of something, and there are some of the pieces, like Yarrow springs to mind. There's like a very specific mythology with Chiron, and Achilles, and so in this case, I don't really remember how we got there, but there have to be fairies. I mean, there have to be fairies. And if there's fairies, then I guess there's going to be forest creatures. And it's and the caterpillar was a little bit of an Alice in Wonderland reference. And
Yeah, and you have the rabbit, and I love too. You might not be able to see it in the card, but the eyes of the rabbit and the fox, they have like there's rays coming from their pupils.
yeah,
And I love that little detail that you added because again, it goes back to the cannabis detail of the rays coming from above her head. And so
well,
there's that
yeah,
opening theme.
it's also, I mean, it's not just oh, eat one of these and you're going to have a trip. It's about magic, really. So all of the creatures that would be viewing this scene, I mean, they're magical and they're experiencing something. I can tell you a ridiculous story having to do with this and some of the other cards, and that is that one of the publishers that I spoke to when we were shopping this was worried about the female characters having nipples. They were like, I don't think we can have that, because it's not going to sell in Barnes and Noble, and it's not going to, it will downgrade your Amazon listings or whatever. So they asked me if I could go throughout all the cards and airbrush out all of the nipples. And I didn't say a hard no, but I mean, because I wanted to get published. But in
Right.
the end, it just ended up being one of the reasons why we walked away from that. And then luckily, we ended up with Lo Scarabeo, which is based in Torino in Italy. And I just remember saying to my contact guy, I'm pretty sure this is now going to be a problem for you guys. But let me just put it out there so that we, can just deal with it. And he was like, they asked you what?
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah,
That's
the
so
other
funny.
the other company was a little shy to put Mandrake on the cover because he's a kind of a sexual being. But
Right.
the Italians were like, no, no, that's the thing. So
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I know even on social media, depending on the avenue you go, because my boyfriend, he's a graphic designer and he also reads tarot and he does videos on breaking down tarot deck or excuse me, tarot cards. And if you're on TikTok, you cannot show nudity.
Yeah.
And so they'll just ban it, whatever. And it was just an interesting thing to see him go through that. And it's
Well, I
like,
remember I did a T-shirt for I did a lot of work for LA Guns back in the day. For those of you that don't, they were really big in a couple of markets that they did not break through as big as Guns N' Roses, but same period of time, etc. And I did a T-shirt for them, and it had these sort of vampire girls, and it was hard line drawings. So with shadows, you didn't see anything you weren't supposed to see. And they said to me, you need to draw in a bikini line. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. And we went back and forth. And I said to him, you would put a bikini on the Venus de Milo. And he said, what's that? Okay, bikini line it is. Just,
yeah, it's always funny to hear the thresholds of these certain.
isn't it crazy? But
It
same
is.
thing. It's like they didn't want to get sued. They want to move the merchandise. So luckily we got to keep all of our symbols of the divine feminine.
Which are so important. And that could be a whole other episode,
Yeah.
I'm sure, that you and I could dive into.
Uh-huh.
So essential to everything that is that we all know.
Truly.
Next up, my favorite. This is my latest purchase from you, the sunflower.
Ah.
And
Well, this was fun because okay, sunflower, all right. So Apollo, that's pretty obvious, right? So my idea for this was Apollo and the chariot and his team of horses. And I was going crazy because these would be kind of really tough angles of horses. My sister is in the animation business, and she's very gifted with modeling. So I asked her to help me. Like, these horses, these angles, this is not working. So she tried to help me, and I'm just going on and on. And then the scale is weird because are the horses going to look tiny and blah, blah, blah. And I put it aside. This is not working. I'm really frustrated. And I put it aside for, I don't know, a month or two. And then I went and took it out. And then it was just like the idea just popped in front of me. They're bees. They're not supposed to be horses. They're bees, of course.
yes,
So that is how that happened. And then it was kind of fun going down some of other rabbit holes, like the seed head of the sunflower is a Fibonacci sequence. So there's something in the symbols there to tell you that. And I cannot get sunflowers to grow in my garden. Like, they don't like the soil. It's mostly shady. It just frustrates me, but I love them. And I love the bumblebees. So
yeah, I absolutely love this piece. And when I purchased it, it was the last symposium last year, and we had it was our first hive that we had. So it was just one of those synchronicities where I flipped to this one. I'm like, oh my goodness. And I was having this huge weave with bees and getting to know them. And luckily we can grow sunflowers out here because where we are in the gorge, we're kind of in that middle ground. We're not quite to Hood River, but we're not like super close into Portland enough where it stays a little cooler and rainier. We're in that middle ground.
Well, where I am was once underwater.
Oh,
Under a river. So there's a lot of fungus in the soil. So there's a whole bunch of things that just don't thrive here. If you try to grow a rose, it's full of black spot, etc. So, but every year I plant them every year, and they just never come. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, I honored them with a design. They still aren't growing. Okay. But like I say, sometimes you just have to accept that's just not happening. But I love them, and I was scared of bees when I was younger, and I my garden here is it's bigger than some people's, but it's quite compact uh, with plantings. And so, there are bees. I mean, they are right there. So you just sort of figure out that they really don't want to bother you if you don't bother them. And I the bumblebees were a revelation because I didn't have as many things that they liked when I first started this garden, but the last few years they have been coming around, and they're so delightful.
Yeah, I would have to agree. And I had the same fear. And then I just planted myself by that hive a couple days in a row, and I would just sit there and, let them be what they're going to be. And exactly the conclusion you came to. It's like, they
Well, yeah,
don't really want to mess
lavender
with me.
farms. In the summer, there are lavender farms not too far from here that open up to the public, and you're going to get over you are either not going to be able to enjoy the lavender farm, or you're just going to get over it because it's just wall to wall bees. And so that was like, okay.
Yep. It's an interesting thing learning about them. They're seriously magical creatures. Next up, as we've brought up a couple times,
Yes.
thornapple. This is one of my all-time favorites of yours, by the way. So I'm very excited to hear your take on it.
Well, what was funny is when I first started talking to Christopher about plants and plant magic, he had mentioned that he was very fond of datura, and so I assumed that that was brugmansia because that was my favorite plant. So when I did that one and made a print of it, I said, "See here, it's your favorite plant," and he said, "That's not my favorite plant." What? Okay. So, okay, then it's like this whole other datura. And brugmansias are pendulous, and stramoniums are erect. They're very sexy. And so, and my very first sketch for this had a male figure, in fact, because I hadn't researched it that much yet. And I had him in my mind. And then when I started reading about it, I was like, oh no, this is female energy big time. So, so that was changed. And this piece is what got him on board. Maybe that wasn't fair of me to do, but what happened is when I finally did this, I just sent him one. In fact, I sent him a couple, and I said, keep one. And he heads the Temple of Witchcraft, and they're fundraising for the temple because they're expanding it. And I said, so keep one and sell a couple. And I finally got the one that you love. And he sent me a message, a Facebook message, and he's on the East Coast and I'm on the West Coast, and it came at like really early in the morning. I was like, and he just said, I got the print. I really love it. Would you like me to write your deck? And I was so half asleep and shocked that I almost started to say no. Oh, that's too much to ask, or whatever. I started, and then I was like, what? No, 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 no. Of course I want you to do that. Oh my God. This is just, it was just the most wonderful and miraculous thing. And just, in particular, because his Plant Spirit Familiar book was just the thing that really got me, into plant magic, as opposed to I garden and I like plants, So it was just kind of a great sort of meant to be kismet kind of moment. And what was even cooler was that while this was going on and I'm 3/4 asleep, I'm just hearing all this rustling. And I'm like, what is that noise? And this is just the witchiest thing that has ever happened to me. I pull back the curtain and there's a whole murder of crows just outside my window. And they're like pecking at the window.
Whoa.
I mean, I've never seen it before. I've never seen it since. And it was just like, okay, there's some magic going on here. I'm like, this.
Yeah.
Sometimes people are like, well, I don't know. It's kind of vague. Is that magic or is that not? That was magic.
Yeah, indeed. And it was like confirmation. The crows were like,
Yeah,
yes, 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 yes.
exactly. And I just, you try and like logic yourself out of believing sometimes, like, was there something, were there acorns on the roof or was there something? And nothing. Nope. And I don't know that he knew he sent them, but he sent them.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool.
It was so cool.
And one of the things too I want to point out about this piece is that so in the border, it's very hard to see because it's tiny, but the frame, you have the folk names of the
Yeah.
thorn apple, and then below the Latin name, for people that might not be able to see it, it says, "Eat a little and go to sleep. Eat a little more and have a dream. Eat a little more and wake no more." And I love that. I love that detail that you added that phrase.
And
Where is
I
that
think
quote
it is
from?
a Native American expression
Okay. I
because
love it.
and the I'm gonna get the details wrong, but this very famous incident where it's called Jimson weed in some places from Jamestown, and there's this very significant historical event where the settlers didn't know that it was poisonous, and they all I mean, not everybody died, if I'm remembering correctly, but everybody was like altered. I think people died. People were like, off their head. And it was just because they, just what would happen if we ate those? Those look good. So that's all those nicknames that come from Jamestown. That's how come we got that expression.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah. See, the Indians like knew what to do with it. So yeah.
Very cool. And I will say, as a person who's grown datura, the sphinx moth, sometimes it's known as the hawk moth.
Yeah.
The first year I started growing datura, I was getting those moths.
Were
And
you?
yes, and then our neighbor found another one in the other garden that we have, and she goes, "Oh my god, there was this moth that had this huge tongue, and it was just, like, fluttering in the center of the garden." And I'm
Mm.
like, "That's the sphinx moth. It's coming around for the datura," and it was just really cool. We were also growing tobacco too, so it could have been there for tobacco as well.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's such a magical plant and it's a very strong association with the moon.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Well,
And
yeah.
with Hecate, if I am correct in seeing that symbol on there, yeah.
Ah, so
Yeah.
glorious. Love it. Next up is vine.
Ah, well, who doesn't like a partying satyr?
Indeed. Oh my gosh, I love the energy of this piece so much.
Well, vine, that is the I want to say Celtic, that's not the right expression. Brain fart. The Druidic runes. Um,
Okay.
That's the symbol for vine. Um, I'm spacing on the name for those runes, but that is basically that is what that symbol is. And vine, uh, the Celts have 13 sacred trees and plants, and vine is one of them, and it is bramble. And I've put grapes in too, because that's just the more common association that we have with vine. But there's also brambleberries in there, and yeah, that's how we got there.
Yeah, and I'm just such a fan of Pan. I
Yeah.
love, such a great energy. And yeah, I believe it's Futhark. Somebody in the chat also said Ogam, but I think the O
Yes, that's it. That's the
is
word.
the
Thank
O
you. The
the
oem.
there you
Yes.
go. Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love this. Gosh, and I think of Vine and then I can't help but think of just wine, and it's
Yeah.
basically, kind of like the same word in a sense when you take the W, just take one of those
Yes, that's right.
V's away. It's a really cool connection and
Right. And in French, it's vin. VIN. Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Willow.
Willow. This was a cool one because it's another one of the Celtic sacred trees, but some of these I would just choose because I was drawn to them, or I like the growing habit, or or you'd have the list of the Celtic trees. There was a minute where I thought that I should just do that as a series before it became a broader thing. And then when you start to read about them, there's all of this cool stuff that you just hadn't thought about, or had no idea about. And as a card carrying goth, this was great because it's very funereal, and I all of those symbols I just like find to be attractive. So you have this poetic. I mean, this is done in the sort of silhouette style of the Victorian era, and you have this sort of poetic character, and he's writing, and you can just make out. Uh, there's the image of his lost love is a line drawing in the trees there. And then there is the funeral urn, and it's got an eternity symbol on it, and the the hand pointing down is a symbol, a cemetery symbol for a sudden death. So
Interesting.
I had a great time with that. Just looking up the the cemetery symbols, and willow is associated with water. And as I say, it's one of the sacred trees to the Celts, which was a little bit of a challenge because the weeping willow that is very common here is a slightly different tree there. So you want to get I like to get the botanical details right, because that's that's who this is for. I mean, I make art to express myself, and you are your own audience in that sense, but that it's going out there. And for a botanical series, I am interested in getting it right for people. I never want to have somebody in the internet going, oh, well, that's the wrong leaf, or whatever. I mean, luckily I am not online enough to be bothered by trolls, although somebody did say to me once that Cernunnos's horns were in the wrong place, and I was like, "Oh, okay." Okay. I accept your opinion, you're wrong, but okay. Um, but I want the botanical, details to be right, and I have, you're an herbalist, you were telling me, and I have, uh a bunch of herbalists that are collecting these. And I mean, my business partner will call me sometimes after a show and he'll say somebody came and they bought 10 prints. Do you know what I mean? Because like people are decorating their offices with them. That's just so wonderful. That's so wonderful. And that is what I want. That if this is a plant that is meaningful to you, I want it to resonate with you, the plant form itself and the symbols, so that it has a familiarity, and like that's the goal. So
Yeah, that and that's amazing, and your work does that, and I really truly mean that, and I think that is one of the main reasons why I was so drawn to your pieces in the beginning, because it really is true to the detail, to the shape, to just the essence. That's one of the things I think you do one of the best, is just capturing the essence of these plants and trees, and,
thank you, appreciate
yeah,
it.
yeah, of course,
It's about the symbols, really, because to just do something that is decorative, that's fine. There's an audience for that. But what makes it what makes it meaningful to me is to explore the symbolism and the, for lack of a better word, the vibe. You know, um, the communication of that plant spirit. That is what I'm trying to get across. And it's okay if somebody buys it just because they like the color of something or that it's decorative. I people people will buy them. Go, that has yellow on it, and that will go in my room or whatever, and that is valid. But it's kind of great for me when something really resonates with somebody that appreciates the plant, so that it speaks to them and it's got more to say just than, oh, that's pretty and I like that one.
yeah, I get that for sure. All right, so wolfsbane,
Oh, Spain.
and AKA this is also known as monk's hood for
Yes, known as
people.
monkshood. And in the design, I know I'm like pointing at the screen, and that's not what people are seeing. Uh, there is a little illustration of a monk's head with the flower being the hood right under the tongue there, because
Okay,
you got to get
right
it
on
all
here.
in there.
Yes.
Well, this is fun to do. Get down with your Norsey self. A friend of mine, I am not expert on Norse traditions or mythology, and I wanted it to have some authenticity. So I approached a friend of mine who was very into that and said, it needs to have some runes and it needs to mean something. And so we have the wolf, and we have these Celtic werewolves as supporters, and we have Odin at the bottom there. So he designed these runes, and he says they are the tail of Fenrir. Um, and I'm trusting him because, like, there's like, okay, this one's upside down, and so I'm trusting him, and he must have got it right because I've sold a lot of these, and nobody has ever said that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But that is what that actually means. And then
Nice.
at the bottom is the list of what those runes are.
Yeah, so we have Urus, Algis, Tewas, Sawillo, Kinat, and Manas,
Yeah.
which even just looking at it with the knowledge I have, and then comparing the runes to monkshood and the energy of it, to me, it lined up on that level. So, yes. Yeah, no, totally. Because I was going through them, I'm like, oh yeah, this totally lines up with the energy of monkshood, and I think that you have nothing to worry about.
Well, like I say, I really want to get it right. I mean, I did an illustration of Caradwyn many years ago, and I was reading a book by Elaine McCoy, and it had a typo in it because the cauldron said "amen" instead of "ah when." I mean,
Ah,
so I had put that on there. I got it from the book. It just never occurred to me. And then somewhere along the line, somebody said to me, "That's wrong." So, I corrected it and reprinted it because, that was kind of a big goof. And her depth of scholarship was maybe not what it ought to be. The book is from quite a few years ago, but yeah, sometimes you read something. I mean, in fact, when I'm researching these, um, you gotta do some. You gotta try to do a deep dive because I have a Rhiannon statue, for instance, and one of the articles about Rhiannon that I was reading associated her with dragons and roses. Oh, cool. I'll put a dragon in it. Oh, she'll have roses or whatever. And then after a while, you're reading other articles and you realize that that person is completely off. They're just writing stuff that sounds pretty to them, but those are not at all what she's associated with. So, you want to do enough research and have enough to compare and contrast that things will emerge as being legit. So, you know, once in a
yeah.
while something escapes you, but I really try and have something backed up if I'm going to put it in there.
Yeah, rightfully so, and it happens to the best of us, there's all sorts of things that happen, and that's part of the humbling too. It's part of just
Yeah,
"All right, well, that's how that went, we'll change it, and then we'll
yeah,
move on?"
exactly.
Yeah, and here's the yarrow. You did bring it
Where's
up
the
earlier.
arrow?
Had to put yarrow in because this is a
Yeah,
glorious one here.
thank you. This was, I think, the next to last one that got done. This was one where Christopher said, "I think we should have Yarrow." Yarrow and Henbane were the two. We have two slots, and there's a lot of plants out there. So what do you think? And these were the two that he thought had to be in there. So, of course, he's right, as always. And Aphrodite, right? She's significant, and then there was the mythology with Chiron the centaur, who is training Achilles to be a warrior, and he's Yarrow has this botanical property of stopping blood from flowing. And as late as World War One, they were actually bringing yarrow into the fields to treat soldiers, um, which I just thought was touching, as well as interesting. And so he is showing Achilles, who's like got the tip of his spear there, that this is a plant that you can use medicinally. And it's also this is also like a kind of a good solstice plant. So we were talking about solstice because it you can have it in other colors, but to me that yellow is the one that feels like the essence of it to me. So that is a good thing to harvest for your solstice celebrations, kids. Get out there.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, that's a great point too, because I was acknowledging the yarrow on my walk today, and this is the time where it really starts to vibe. You can really,
Yeah,
it's opening up and it's coming around. It's usually, I tend to find it near St. John's Wort, which,
yeah.
is
Also, yeah,
obviously heavily associated with the solstice. But yeah, interesting. I know I love the different colors too, and then hearing Christopher's knowledge with the flower essences, and then each color has its own attribute on
yeah,
the essence level, which is always really fascinating to me as well.
yeah.
All right. So we've got after this one. Okay. So this we have three more to go. So,
Okay.
all right. So this is Mandrake. And this to me is just, I just really wanted to throw this one in here because it is the cover of the Oracle,
Yeah.
so people can kind of get familiar with what this looks like as well. And then I just like to hear what you have to say about this one as well.
Yeah. Well, if people had to pick one plant that they associate with witchcraft, a lot of people are going to come up with mandrake. And I also I like male imagery, and there's a lot less of it in illustration. And I just find him cheeky and fun, and you know, some people think that they're kind of demonic, but that's sort of too simple, I think. And like I said before, the magic is in the dose. The psychoactive chemistry is I put those symbols on there um, because that's kind of interesting to know. And the invocation to Mandrake comes out of Christopher's Plant Spirit familiar book. And what else can I say about him? There's all kinds of interesting tales about Mandrake. The idea that it was going to scream when you pulled it, it was going to shriek. A detail that J.K. Rowling put in the Harry Potter books. J.K. Rowling is a controversial figure lately, but it always struck me that she might have legit been a witch because there's a lot of stuff in those books that is kind of spot on. So it's too bad that she's kind of gone off the rails. But anyway, the shriek emitted from the mandrake when yanked out of the ground was supposed to be so piercing that it would kill a man. So medieval peasants came up with this idea that they would tie the mandrake to a dog and then have the dog run away so that and then the dog might die, but it's not really good either. But that was their solution. What can I say? It was the Dark Ages. Um, so but he's all about virility. He's all about sorcery. And I have not grown mandrake. Mandrakes are kind of notoriously difficult to grow, and they the people that I know that have success with them have to dig them up when it gets cold and put them in pots over the winter. That in itself is kind of hard to pull off. So so I'm an appreciator rather than a propagator of mandrake. But he's just kind of the essence of what this whole project was about. And you gotta love him. And he, like I say, virility and sexuality and all that great stuff. we like. And I was really pleased when Los Garbios said they wanted to put him on the cover, because that really felt right to me.
Yeah, it's perfect for the cover, and it's so captivating. And I too, I have not grown mandrake, but just admire it anytime it comes up. Anytime I read any stories about it, I'm very fascinated by it. So, yeah,
Yeah,
very fun.
my the guy who manufactures my statues wants a mandrake statue, and I'm not quite sure how to do that, but
Oh, yeah,
it would
wow.
be really fun. I just haven't figured out the logistics of it. Um, but yeah, that might happen. No promises, but that might happen. That's kinda percolating.
And we have Belladonna next.
Ah, Belladonna, the beautiful lady. Yeah. Well, if you're gonna do magical plants, this is one of those must-haves. And again, I think Greek mythology provides the the germ of the idea. And there were interesting details that I learned along the way, like that the women would dilate their pupils with belladonna to make their pupils really large, because that was considered to be beautiful. You've got your triple moons there, and uh, the name of the goddess is escaping me, and it's so obvious. But
Oh, no, I wonder if I can research I could search it
well,
really quick
she's
if
the
you want.
one who cuts the thread of life, and she's got her scythe there. One of the
Oh.
fates. Her name starts with an A. I'm really sorry, scholars. I'm blowing it for you. I want to say Ariadne, but I could be wrong. But yeah, just as associations with death, and it's a
A
very
a
magical plant.
Atropos?
Yes,
There you
thank you.
go.
Okay.
Yes.
It's in the name, for God's sakes.
Yeah, you're good. It's all good. I
Well,
just love
I was saying before we went on the air, that I immerse myself in these things while I'm doing them, and then I let them go, and I haven't thought about it for literal years, and should have looked at the name. Okay.
well, I have to say before we move on to the last card, I just love the shape you create here, with this print, and just how the leaves come up and kind of just round her out. And I love the black on the card here. It's just really striking.
Well,
The
the berries of the plant are inky black, which is one of the things that suggested it needed to be done that way. Because, like I say, the properties of the plant itself, the shapes of the leaves, and those kind of things, they're very informative about what you're going to do. And like the idea sometimes just comes very purely from looking at photos or illustrations. Vintage botanical illustrations are almost more helpful than photographs sometimes.
I would agree. I definitely agree with that, and they're sometimes even more pleasant to look at. I mean,
Yeah,
really.
yeah, that too.
All right, well, last but not least, we have hellebore.
Hellebore is one of my favorite plants, and that I loved hellebores. I grew them. And this was one where I didn't really know much about them, other than it's just a favorite plant, those dark, sexy leaves, and they're uh, they're a plant that blooms. Um, they're in there are two varieties. One blooms in December, and one blooms around Easter. So they call them Lenten rose, um, in as a nickname. But they're just wonderful. And then they had all of these interesting magical associations that I didn't really know about. I just liked the plant. So some of the things that got into this deck were thusly, I just liked the plant. I grew the plant. And then I was reading about it. And I was like, oh my goodness, there's all this stuff here. So yeah, she's associated with water, strongly associated with the moon, you know, very feminine, dark energy, and also poisonous. Do not eat them.
Yeah, no, don't.
And this is like an homage to Mucha in particular, my Art Nouveau, one of my Art Nouveau heroes, you know.
Yeah, I was definitely gonna bring that up because I love that aspect of this one for sure. Because Art Nouveau is one of my all-time favorite genres as well, and so when I see this, it's like one of the first things I think of, and I think you do it so gracefully, and I have to say, this would be a beautiful tattoo. For the right artist.
Yeah, yeah, you better get ready to sit there a long time.
Oh, yeah, my goodness, I can only imagine.
Well, uh, the pre-Raphaelite artists and the Art Nouveau artists, I mean, they're basically like botanical Bibles. I mean, because the detail. I mean, it's just I think I wrote about this in the foreword, but where you can kind of fake roses, you can fake sunflowers, you could do, leaf shapes or whatever. And then there is just this moment in time where you realize getting things to be a little more accurate is going to make your art a lot better and a lot more interesting. And then it like is overwhelming. Oh my God, there's so many plants, If you look at some of those pre-Raphaelite paintings, I mean, such care is taken to get every detail right. And also the symbolism of the plants and flowers is a big feature. And you could look at those paintings just casually and not know anything about what's going on there. But I think that it's in the juju that these paintings have this wonderful vibrancy, and it's not because they're pretty, and it's not because they're decorative. It's because these artists studied the symbolism and the meaning of every plant that's in there, and it's painted with this loving detail, and it just informs, these paintings, really famous paintings of Ophelia in particular. They're not just that's a pink one and that's a white one. There is meaning in everything in those paintings, and that is just something that I really try to emulate.
Yeah, I love it. So glorious. Well, I have to say thank you for, running through all these with me.
My pleasure.
And I know the people in the chat are really appreciating it too, just being able to get, a grander perspective of your work, but more importantly, the deck. And so, I also want to, how do you say Christopher's last name?
Penzak.
Penzak. So Maxine and Christopher Penzak did this together. And so if you want to, if just before I let you go, kind of talk a little bit maybe about the process of, um, was it, was it an easy process? Was it very natural? Did it feel laborious at times? If you could sum it up in just a brief summary, what was the process of making this oracle and working with Christopher?
Well, it was lovely. He's a lovely person. He is an encyclopedia of plant magic and knowledge. So I didn't have to wonder whether he was going to have to do a whole bunch of homework. We hooked up late in the process, which was kind of, which was kind of good. He accepted the ones that I'd chosen and had his suggestions. But, unfortunately, we live on opposite sides of America, so we were not able to work too closely. It was mostly done over emailing and phone calls, and I gave him my notes of the things that I'd gotten from research, and then there was the piece itself. But he said a lovely thing at this spring. We presented together at Paganicon, and it was possibly the only time we would ever have got to present together. And when we were having questions, I mean, he said some things that surprised me and vice versa. But he has over 30 books out there. He's world respected, and he had never done a deck, which was almost weird. I mean, most witchcraft authors get a deck out a lot earlier in their careers. And somebody asked him, why did you never do a deck? And he said he was never moved to do one, but that he loved what I was doing, and that he said a lot of tarot and oracle illustrations to him are decorative but kind of dead looking, but that he found life in my illustrations, and my devotion to plants was evident to him from looking at them. So that was what made him just want to be a part of it. And most of what he works on is much weightier material. And so for him, this was actually fun. And I just couldn't believe that he was going to do it with me. I mean, if I could just, I actually was chasing a couple of other potential authors to work with me, and having no success, because I just didn't even have the cheek to think that I would get him on board. But he wanted to do it, and it was just such a delight. And once we got together with Los Scarabeo, they were also great to work with. They supported this vision. Some of the other people we talked to wanted to make a lot of changes, and we were like, no. And Los Scarabeo was like, this is great. We're doing this. And they were delighted to have all the extra text that he was expecting them to cut, and they loved it. And they said, no, we're doing the whole thing. So it was a pleasure, and we have been, delighted that it has been so well received too, because you never know.
Yeah, that's true. You do never know.
You really never know, especially with oracle decks. Oracle decks are things that tend to come and go pretty quickly. So my hope for it is that it actually will stick around for a while, and it's nothing to do with X numbers or X dollars. It's just, you just want it to be out there, and reach as many people as possible.
Yeah, for sure. And, my sense about it too is that there is a timelessness to it, not only because of your art, but I think the information that he shares. It's like this stuff, this goes beyond just like we were talking about that surface level sort of, whimsical side of things. He's telling you medicinal qualities of the plant, the essences, the vibrations, the folklore traditions, so you're getting a full package when you get this oracle.
A lot of the mythology, I mean, it's ancient mythology, so it's it's definitely but I mean, the these are things that resonate today for sure. And
Definitely.
the idea that you can grow these things is just great. It's right there for you.
Oh man. Well, I absolutely loved this chat we had. And before you get going, I'd love to give you an opportunity to just shout yourself out, let people know where they can find you, let people know how they can get the deck as well, or any other of your art pieces, your statues. You also work in sterling silver jewelry, which we didn't get a chance to talk about either. But yeah, the floor is yours, my lady. And all
Okay.
your links are also down below for people to
Oh, that's
find you
great.
too.
Thank
Yes.
you for that. Yes, you can find me at MaxineMillerStudios.com. And my sister site is CelticJackalope.com, which is all of the merchandise at Maxine Miller Studios, plus things that have to do with Scottish clans. So, you know, if you're interested in that, you should check that out. And I am on Facebook. I have a page, Maxine Miller Studios. I am on Twitter at Maxine Miller 999. I am on Instagram, I think just at Maxine Miller. And you can get the deck at my website, which is great. We'd love for you to do that. You can also get my deck from Llewellyn.com, because Llewellyn is our American distributor. But it's, of course, more fun when you buy it from us. And there is, as she says, plaques, statues, sterling silver, jewelry, loads of T-shirts. Basically, you want it, we got you.
Love that. And for anyone who wants it, the link to her website is up on the screen as well, and it's in the chat. And yes, well, I will bid you adieu and allow you to enjoy the rest of your evening. As already, thank you again so much for your time. I really enjoyed it. And yeah, just continue doing what you do, because you've nailed it. As you know, it's so strongly felt in your art, your passion and your knowledge and your wisdom. It really comes through. So thank you for doing what you do. I really appreciate it. And
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was pretty great. Thank you.
awesome. You're very welcome. And we'll talk again at another point.
Yeah.
All right. Bye-bye. Take care. All righty, my friends. Well, that was a lovely chat. And I just really love that we got to go through some of the cards and show you some more of the details and what have you. And I really encourage people to seek out Maxine's work if you can and if you feel called to, because as we were talking about, when there's artists who are really passionate about what they're doing and they're able to capture the realism of whatever they're trying to translate, it's very special because there's something so just divine about it. And you get to learn through their way of presenting, and it's an accurate way to learn. So I just encourage you guys to seek her out. And as always, I do have updates for anyone who wants to stick around. No pressure, but I'm going to put this back up on the screen here. Let's see, I've got next slides. All right. So, as always, thank you to all my patrons. You guys are coming in droves, and it feels so nice to have you guys join me on Patreon. As always, thank you to Chance, Binaboo, Inland Sea, Liam, Amy, Miri and Hank, Jenny G, Erica, Moonlander, Mary, Catherine, Logan, Lily Vine, Debbie, and Natasha. Thank you guys so much for all your support every month. It means so much to us. You're helping me keep the wheels turning over here at the Healing Home. And as always, all of you guys get my updates for my full moon offering a day before everybody else. So you guys can, make sure to be able to get the products before anyone else can. Because as you know, I do very small batches. So sometimes I sell out real quickly. So patreon.com/thehealinghome for anyone who wants to join us over there. Next week's show, I have Mary Beth Sanchez of the Growcast. So actually, our buddy Lee Thunder Chicken reached out to me and sent me over Mary Beth's episode on Growcast. And he said, I think she'd be a great guest for you. She is a cannabis grower. She's a gardener. She lives in this region as well. So very excited to talk with her next week. That will be 6/27/23 at 4 p.m. Same place, same time. So I'm looking forward to getting into some gardening wisdom with Mary Beth. That'll be a really fun one. Full Moon Offering newsletter for anyone who's interested. You can sign up on my website, michelleshealinghome.com. The next issue is coming out on July 3rd when the moon will be nice and full, and I'll have a brand new offering for you guys on that day. Until then, I still have some of my soap and shampoo bars left from the last full moon. I've got my mugwort, earth hag soap, and comfrey nettle and pine shampoo bar, and the calendula salt soap. All of them are still available. I only have 1 or 2 of the shampoo bars left, but for anyone who's interested, you can, as always, reach out to me via email, michelleshealinghome@gmail.com. And then up on the screen, you see my current menu, what I've got going on. I just listed off my soap and shampoos for you guys, but I also have a few other items that are coming through the pipeline. And I've got a few new things in the queue for you guys, which I'm really excited about. So stay tuned for all of that stuff. You'll know more on the newsletter for sure. And michelleshealinghome@gmail.com for questions, concerns. You want to schedule a consultation, place an order. Pretty soon we'll have an online shop, which will be really exciting. We're going to be working on that over the next couple months. michelleshealinghome.com for anything else, or you can call and text me 503-568-1569. We also did an episode of last Thursday, me and Mario. We talked about Charles Manson. We talked about the 1960s. We talked about the counterculture and all the things connected to it. And so we're going to carry on again with that same theme this coming week because it's one of my favorite subjects to talk about. I'm very passionate about it. I've done so much research on the Manson mythos and all that's connected to it. So we're kind of going with our own summer of love this summer, and we're going to just dive into that information a little bit more, which I'm really excited about. And with all of that said, my friends, I will bid you all adieu and say happy summer solstice once again to y'all. Thank you so much for being here tonight and joining our conversation. And yeah, I think that's all. So just thanks again. We'll see you next week, Tuesday, and take care.